the A2Pcast for the week of October 2nd, 2013, the Pandora's Steam Box edition. I'm Mike Rifenbury, the editor of Alive to Play. With me this week is Josh Hartman, Mike Schupsky, and a special guest this week, our friend Mike Hogue. He's coming in to sit and chat with us about some stuff here. So, topics for this week: digital versus physical media, going into next-gen, downloadable versus buying things on disc. What will the dynamics of that be? And when do we think the switch will happen from a dominant physical to digital media? Next-gen open-world gaming, and the Steam Box that was announced this week. So let's get right into the media question. All games are going to be available day one as downloadable versions, which is something we've seen, I think, with not too many games on this console cycle, though more as we get later on. What do we think that'll do to physical media sales? Schupsky, what do you think?
I still think the physical media, from the reaction by people with the Xbox One DRM fiasco, they're still around to stay for the foreseeable future.
Is that just because they haven't experienced it firsthand?
I don't know. I guess it is. That could be the case, but I kind of relate it to what Netflix tried to do, 2 years ago with the Quickster split. They tried to basically fizzle out their disc business.
Well, but I think
you remember
there were a couple issues with that, and I think that was because they were creating two separate services, and they were charging more for both. If I recall.
But the thought behind it was they're trying to they were. I wouldn't say. I guess they were. They were a little bit too forward thinking, and they were thinking that people were willing to do away with their discs already, and that wasn't the case. I think Xbox or Microsoft learned from the DRM fiasco. People aren't quite yet willing to part with their discs yet. I would include myself in that category. I'm not willing to part with my physical copy of GTA 5 just yet. I'd still rather have a copy with me so I can trade it in and get gamer points or do with it what I will.
But that's clearly the trend, though, isn't it? I mean, that's where all media is going, right?
Oh, no question. No question.
Yeah, I think part of the problem just happens to be that people need to learn how to trust the cloud. Because the exact same thing
I have faith in the cloud.
has happened with CDs, obviously. Yes, you can still buy CDs, but I mean, who does?
I haven't purchased a CD in God knows how long.
And for a while, people didn't want to not have CDs because it's hard to feel like you own it if you don't have a physical copy of it. But after a while,
legally, you don't own it.
Well,
I mean, you're licensing it. That's what oh God, what's the acronym I'm looking for? The license agreement, whatever.
Yes.
But that's what that's for. It's the fact that you don't own it. You're licensing it.
Right. But still, that feeling of...
Oh, but I get it. The tactility of having an item.
And it also helped that the ideas about it improved when the cloud improved, especially after Apple finally started letting you re-download things that you had previously downloaded. When you download it once, and if it gets deleted somehow, that's a scary thought to say, well, where did it go?
Right.
A CD doesn't just disappear. Unless you lose it, in which case you've got another place to blame that. But then as the cloud becomes more reliable and as we become more accustomed to the idea of digital ownership, people stopped caring about CDs. And I think the same thing will happen with games. The environment just has to become as ubiquitous as music's digital environment has become. And we need to trust the concepts behind it. We need to feel okay with... And I kind of embrace the good things about it, that if you can't break your disc. You can't scratch your disc. You can't lose your disc.
Right.
If you don't have enough space, you can delete it. And in a few months, you want to play it again, you can download it again because it remembers that you've purchased it. And you always have access to it no matter where you are. And that's something that Microsoft was kind of going toward. But it does, like I said, comes with that requirement that the environment has to be good enough to support that. And it's easier to do that over a long time. You can't just cut one off.
Right.
You have to let one die naturally by selection.
Yes, I think that was Microsoft's biggest mistake in the ramping up to this launch, is that they tried to play the Apple card, and they basically said, like, this is how it's going to be, and you're just going to have to get used to it. And people pushed back so hard against that because they live in the world that, of physical media. They still go to the game store. They still buy the disc.
However short discs have in terms of lifespan, people still have them, and they don't want to just be cut off immediately from it. Yeah, like Josh said, they just want it to die off gracefully.
Right.
And then
let it happen naturally.
And then make the smooth transition to digital media.
Is trading a game in part of that thought process, or is that a separate thing?
For me, it is. Like,
yeah. But what about a game? But what about a game that you are not going to trade in? You have no intention of ever trading in.
This is an interesting point because like there are still games that I've kept forever that I have every intention of keeping forever. But there's still those games like Far Cry 3. I played through it. I loved it. I traded in really soon because I knew I could get a lot of money for it. In the future, if I bought a Far Cry 3 and I played it and I loved it and then I didn't really play it anymore, it's still there because I can't really trade it in.
Right.
So the potential money I could get from said game is lost.
Is there the potential to maybe do some kind of like digital trade where you sort of relinquish your...
If you agree, there could be something where like you only have this game for a specific time frame, and then it wipes itself from the hard drive. That could be something. Yeah.
Right. So it's almost like a digital game rental service.
Yeah.
I think that could be something, but that's going to require the cooperation
of a lot of
the people who want to see game trading die because it's making them lose money.
I mean, but the only way you could get me to buy something like that is if the price was lower. Like, I wouldn't pay $60 for a game that's going to delete itself in 3 months. I'd pay $30.
Oh, right.
Because theoretically, you pay $60 for the game now, trade it in, you get $30. It still works out. So like, I still paid $30 for that game.
Yeah.
But the publishers might not go with that. They might say, we still want you to pay $60 regardless of when.
Well, because the alternative is that you buy the game for $60 digitally and it's yours forever.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care if you
they
play it after a month.
They just want money. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they've made their money. They've got theirs, as we like to say. Is high-speed internet penetration a prohibitive factor?
Yes, because I think it's still shocking how far we have to go to get everyone on board this high-speed connection. It is really far spread now, but really far spread is still very far from completely covered. And there are a lot of areas that you just can't get quality internet. Even in areas that you can sometimes have quality internet, is it consistent?
Right.
There are tons of companies all around the country that will advertise beautiful high speeds, Comcast, but is it going to happen all the time? If your entire gaming...
Does your internet randomly shut off at 3 a.m. every morning, Comcast?
Yeah, if that happens to you, that's going to influence your thought process in, is always online a good idea?
Right.
And that's, again, something that will improve with time, as it has improved with time, and I think Google's going to help us out here. I was just... because Netflix has a listing of their rankings of the best ISPs in the country for Netflix, people that partner with Netflix, and obviously Comcast won't partner with Netflix.
Of course, because they have their own
stream
picks, right? Something like that.
Which, whatever. But Google is listed as the best ISP in the country with, what is its name? It's an F. Google Fiber.
Oh.
But where is Google Fiber?
Not here.
I just did my arms out. People who can't see me. Is it in my... No, it is...
Not in my apartment.
I imagine that Google Fiber will spread, and as Google Fiber spreads...
Well, it's Google, so...
As Google does do a lot
Google's
of
good at spreading.
really, really great things. I mean, even look at Gmail versus all of its competition.
What competition?
Right. And only now how many years did it take Hotmail and Yahoo to offer the same services Gmail offered? And now everyone all online email is much better for what Gmail did for it, with all the storage abilities.
That's actually an interesting point to really pull out. There are very few internet providers actually have invested interest in making money off of providing better internet. Google, on the other hand, has invested interest. They have a product that they want to give to you and make sure it's better and better and better. And the only way they can do it is by making the internet better. And they don't see that as being a case with a lot of these. They're going to provide their own and going to make it best. So we need internet providers that are going to be like that. It's a bit of a bunny trail, so we're going to...
No, that's fine. That's good.
But so as we go, I think, a little bit farther into the future, we're going to have companies that really are going to provide internet because they have a product on that internet stream that needs that
they want to deliver, instead of, whereas you have them sort of restricting bandwidth for certain people who they know do a lot of like Netflix streaming or something like that, which I don't remember. Was that ruled illegal? Are they allowed to do that, or I don't remember what the verdict was on that.
I don't remember.
But
I remember that.
Right, but that was a thing a while ago. It's like, can Comcast
do that?
Like kill your internet speed if you're using Netflix too much, or what they feel is too much in favor of their own service?
Yeah.
It's like, can they throttle your service like that? But I mean, again, like you said with Google, there's no, why would they do that? Because it's in their interest.
And then also, once they're able to kind of champion that internet service, then it doesn't matter what they do. There's not a restriction on their service then. Which then you're going to find a lot of other people, a lot of other secondary indirect users, other websites, other direct wholesale is going to be able to use that to a greater capacity.
That's actually, that's a really nice example of those times when capitalism works. Because I was just thinking in my head, the way the United States has such a problem with ISPs,
right,
just being awful because they have no reason to improve themselves in the way other countries. The government is more involved in providing internet because they recognize it as a right that everyone has a right to access good internet. And I think some of them, the government controls the infrastructure, and then they market it out to private companies to provide the services to people. But the infrastructure is owned by the government, and so that they can keep that kind of like they look at it as the same way you would look at roads, and it's a necessary societal infrastructure that the government
highways of information.
Just a quick tie that around. That's why I think one of the biggest problems we're having in America is the U.S. Postal Service. In modern day terms, if we translate that, that's really the internet. That's what the internet has done. That is a modern adaptation of the U.S. postal system. And the reason why we use internet is a transformation of information, just the same way we use the Postal Service. So why the government does not want to fund the infrastructure like they would the Postal Service. And now they have the two entities kind of fighting each other, physical and internet. I mean, that really, when it comes down to it, that's where the modern day funding should go, just like the roads and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Talking about politics, this shit just got real.
So each of the next-gen consoles is going to come with a 5 gigabyte hard drive. Just so you know, we're all about the future. A 500 gigabyte hard drive. Is that enough space? Now, comparing it to what we have on the 360 and the PS3, you have upper end. Well, actually, not even on the 360. The top is 320. On the PS3, the top is 500. Yeah. But if you're envisioning a future, which I think all of us are, in which every game is downloadable, if you have a dual layer Blu-ray, you're talking about 50 or 60 gigabytes of potential information per game. Yeah. And 500 gigabytes is not going to cut it.
Well, I think this comes into their plans for using the cloud to stream games. As Microsoft, at least, has promised us that games will get better because they will outsource some of their information and processing power
to the cloud.
But
now it's not always online.
Servers. But if it's not always online, well then Microsoft is right that always online is the future. We can't really debate that always online is what's coming.
Oh, sure.
And that's where 500 gigabytes, you're right, it won't be enough. By the end of the life cycle, if the life cycle of the next consoles is the same as the life cycle of these consoles, 500 gigabytes will not be enough.
Which they have, and I think correctly, they have said this will probably be a decade-long life cycle, and I would probably agree with them because of the slowing speed of hardware development. is that the gap between, say, the original Xbox and the 360 in terms of hardware was very large, and even what happened in like the PC world and the high-end computing world in that amount of time was massive. And between the 360 and now, not as much. And even though we have new consoles that are coming out with significantly better hardware, I think that hardware will last longer in stacked up against
over 10 years or over 8 years, like comparing it to this generation.
Right,
I think the hardware that I have now will sustain us for a
long time, longer than the current gen has.
Yeah, and then sorry to interrupt you for just a second, but this is where I think like the say 5 years we might get an Xbox One Slim with no optical drive, terabyte of storage.
Terabyte?
Tetrabyte.
Yeah.
Terabyte.
3 bytes.
3 whole bytes. 1 gigawatt of RAM. Watch out, guys.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, I'm sure they will fix this problem. 500 gigabytes is not enough.
Not
the same as quote unquote 20 read 13 gigabytes on the original 360 was not enough. And especially with flash storage. Because I mean, what kind of hard drives are these? Are these
these are not solid state.
Flash drives?
These are absolutely not solid state. I mean, 500 gigabyte solid state. No.
Yeah.
Unless you want to raise the price of the consoles by several $100.
They will be just like
in a few years, perhaps.
The 360. I mean, going from 20 to 250. That's a pretty big leap.
That's a huge jump.
You can scale that up from 500. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if halfway through its cycle they start giving us several terabytes of space to accommodate these large sizes.
And also just considering the fact that hard drive space, like per gigabyte, is now so inexpensive. I mean, I'm gonna, show my not so old age right now, but just say that like, not too long ago, hard drive space per gigabyte was several dollars, and now it's like less than $1, like 50 cents to the gig. It's minuscule. It's tiny. Not even that. God, it's literally like pennies on per gigabyte. So the cost of a terabyte or a 2 terabyte hard drive in one of these systems in a year, 2, 3 years isn't unthinkable in any way. And I think that would give them the ability to have enough space to allow everyone to download all of their games, which seems to be the inevitable future.
But then, this is just mirroring what's happening. Blockbuster's out of business. We're seeing this just transfer into these. They're going to prepare.
Oh, right. And it's happening so quickly, too.
It really is.
And so it's like, 10 years from now, will anybody buy optical media?
No.
I mean, it's just...
And I was going to say earlier, it's kind of like the old man syndrome. I'm not ready to part with that physical disc, but there's a whole generation that has not even purchased a disc.
True, there are 12-year-olds right now who may have never purchased a CD before.
Yeah. And
may have? I think it's... they...
Almost.
A 12-year-old would have been born in 2001. They've never bought a CD.
When was the last time that I actually purchased a CD for music? I have not purchased a CD for music. And we purchase a lot of music. I mean, it's just not... It's the world that's changing. Rather fast.
So, topic number 2 is next-gen open-world gaming. Of course, we've just had the release of Grand Theft Auto 5. We've all been putting in our time, slaving away at that. Oh god, it's so great. But as awful consumers as we are, we want to know what's next. What else could we do in this genre? And particularly on next-gen hardware, what will the possibilities open up to be?
I think there's still a lot of room for improvement. As great as the open-world games we have are right now, I was just talking the other day to you, I think, about the things that I still think should be there. And it's things that require... It's going to get harder and harder. And I think it's like exponentially more difficult to create a good open-world game. Just uphill, just keep pushing that boulder up in order to make it a better experience. Some of the easy things I thought of that might make Grand Theft Auto more exciting are like needing to, inconveniences almost, like needing to refill your gas tank
Life problems.
Life problems, I think, would help. I really do help with
car
horror games.
breaks.
As I said
My
before.
iPhone has frozen.
Your car breaks down in the desert and you need to call AAA.
Right, things like that.
Get a ride back to town.
To make it a little less easy for you, and I think the details can help open world games in the near future. More little things like that just taking more time to develop them. But as far as the long term, I think just the worlds need to continue to become more livable, and maybe this cloud-based computing will help us there because you want to have things that work. Like when you're playing SimCity and you go in on that sidewalk mode and you click one person, you can see what their name is. And you can see where they live and you can see where they work. But right now they're only doing very rudimentary. They go to their apartment, they leave their apartment, they go to work, and they come home.
But they are a physical representation of the actual game data.
Yeah.
And I think that's important.
Yes, well, in SimCity's
In SimCity, right. And I
That's
think
true.
translating that to a game like Grand Theft Auto or an open world
right.
game.
These are the things that we need, but there needs to be more information there too. Like,
Right.
if we really wanted to get open world with that, what are they doing in their apartment? Are they getting married? Do they know other people in the city?
I was talking to
And there's
Schupsky.
more processing power. But
I was talking to Schupsky about this very thing, actually, and just thinking about taking a system like the Elder Scrolls has with their AI system, the randomization that they have in that, and applying it to, say, building interiors. So in Grand Theft Auto 5, you still can't go in all of the buildings. In fact, most of the buildings you cannot go in.
Mhm.
What if, though, each building had a sort of procedurally generated interior? So if it was an apartment building, you just classify the apartment buildings, or the buildings, say it's an apartment building, it's a commercial building, it's a store, it's whatever. And it's not to say that you have, like, really deep interaction in any of these buildings, but if you just want to go run through an apartment building and just, like, walk down the hallway, maybe, you're just walking down, you hear some domestic violence going on in this apartment, you hear someone cooking in this one, you hear someone singing in another, and just, like, those random things, and just creating enough of those that you get a sense that, like, people are actually going through their daily lives, or maybe even having
isn't just like a thing. It isn't just
right. It isn't just for show.
It's just a block.
There's actually something happening inside, even when you're not paying attention, even when you're not looking. These people are going through their lives, doing things like the person who lives in this building has a job somewhere in the city. They go there from 9 to 5. They come back. They drive the car. So the cars aren't just like, well, there's a car here and someone's driving it. It's that person.
Yeah, like say the parking garages in GTA, like they have the same. They have a certain pattern in like the same people that drive their car to say like the building next door. You see that same car every day.
Yeah, right. So it's like if you want to stalk somebody in Grand Theft Auto,
you can do that.
You can do it because you can do it in like Skyrim. You have NPCs that are named and they go to their house, they sleep in a bed that's been set for them, and just like translating that to something as big and open as, say, Grand Theft Auto 5, or even larger.
We'll just kind of simplify this. This is kind of like if there's nobody in the woods to hear the tree fall, did the tree really fall? We want to know. We want to be able to, even if we're not there, we want the ability to go and hear the tree fall.
Right.
So I think that is definitely...
Yeah. Well, it's kind of the voyeurism of video games, too.
Yeah. It gives
like
you
being able to know that, like, anywhere I look, I can do whatever I want. Yeah. And if I just want to go, like, break down someone's door, they're going to be there cooking pasta for dinner for their little fucking kid.
And I know they're cooking pasta because I followed them for the last week.
Right. And they bought pasta at the store. They came home from their desk job. They hate their life. They talked to their grandmother on the cell phone for half an hour. And now they're cooking pasta. And I'm going to go break down their door.
Yes.
This conversation reminds me of a lot of different games, and I think the best way we're going to be able to get this in a game is we need to like bring all of these hanging threads together. I think of Hitman. We haven't talked about Hitman, I think, yet on the podcast, but Hitman is really good at these ideas, although it focuses in on the things you do, and it's not as open as you'd want it to be, but they're on the right train of thought. Like when you've got your assassination in Hitman Absolution, or the entire history of the series, there are so many ways to kill them. There's a lot of attention to detail. Even sometimes enough detail that they've worked at that you can just make it up, and it'll still work. If you think, maybe I can poison his food. Look hard enough, it's probably true that you can find a way to poison his food. Frostbite, with all of its destructibility.
Yeah.
All of these systems, that the games are made of all these little systems, but they all operate independently, and they all need to talk to each other. The inside worlds need to become the outside worlds. Like, if you want to, in Skyrim, you're in Whiterun and you want to follow someone into their home, you should also have the ability to burn their home down. And the game doesn't, the game has fire, and you can catch on fire, and there is fire damage, but you can't burn their home down.
Right.
And, I mean, it's not that important, maybe they thought at the time, but that doesn't seem like something that could be that crazy.
Of an open world.
In terms of like what Frostbite can do, we need to bring all these things together. Minecraft really succeeds at this because it's so simple. So maybe we should start thinking of it from starting at a Minecraft level and then adding in the complexity on top of it.
Yeah.
Although that's where the problem is.
Or maybe this is one of those things that's like it almost becomes like Minecraft in that it's like you have this increasing complexity, and it's almost like you don't even necessarily need a game with a story or a point, really, because it's just about experiencing a world.
Yeah, and that's like, I would say that's like 90% of the reason why you play GTA in the first place. You play it to interact in this world that they've created, and it's so wonderfully rendered and so wonderfully
It's so lush.
put together and so lush, that you just spend, like when you start up playing GTA, like you drive around and you look around and you walk around, and like if you could take that a step further and like actually watch people do things. And they're not just walking around just because they're randomly generated. They're walking around because they have something to do that day.
Right, they're going somewhere.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
That's true. I generally run and walk more in GTA than I do in real life.
Yeah.
Just so I can do it. Just so you can do it.
Although that
Just
does
because
remind
you
me,
can do it,
Just because I
some games, I mean, I think most games could do this, but they choose not to because of the limitations of the hardware. So maybe this is something that, again, will help with cloud computing. When they can farm things out better, they can have a system that controls, in general, the fitness of your character, depending on how physically active they are. That's a tiny detail that can matter a lot. In any game, just pick a game.
The cloud-based also allows for more updates. So as they release the game, the continual update of
and I think that's something that's really close. We're going to have that.
Because I was actually going to mention the cost of, how much it costs to have GTA 5 built, that massive world.
Oh, yeah.
It was apparently the most expensive game ever developed, I think. Like, almost $300 million.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think half of that was something like marketing. But even still, marketing is important.
It's a lot of money.
Especially for a game like
So
that.
the cost of building this, a world that each individual, whether or not they're in the main story, each individual creature has a story. It's something that it almost seems can only be done on the cloud, where the future has to go on the cloud because it can be continually updated.
Right. Although,
now
here's a little game-changing topic I've got for you here.
Okay.
How does this? We're talking about things with such huge scope.
Yeah.
What about this trend of the rise of indie games? Which indie games tend to be the most artistic and the most well thought out and the most beautifully little crafted experiences. But indie games do not have the resources to create these open world experiences. So what is the future that we're really looking for? I mean, everyone wants to have more open world games and more options.
Right.
But we also don't want to keep relying on 2 or 3 big budget blockbusters, which are the only people that have the power or resources to do anything. How do we find the way for the entire, what is the word I'm looking for, the culture to support AAA titles, as well as this diversification of indie studios?
May I enter?
Yeah,
This I think is a perfect example of how technology really is in favor of the masses as opposed to just the few. Because Mike really has taught himself how to create graphics in a game, and if he continues to work hard enough, sorry, which Mike? It's the editor, Mike. Sorry.
There are 3 of us right now.
Too many of us. But we're seeing that people without a huge name, without a huge amount of wealth, can produce a decent product.
Thanks, Mike. Tell everyone on the internet how poor I am.
I'm just not saying you're a multi-millionaire.
No, but that's a good point. And I think that is going to be the conflict going forward in gaming is that you have really interesting and I think important and developmental experiences through indie games, but you do still have, like in the case of Rockstar Games, you have really huge budget AAA titles that also kind of feel like the future of gaming. And it's not to say that I don't think gaming can go in several directions. I think it must, in fact. But it's just an interesting way that, what do we want more? Or is there a way that they can merge? I'm not.
Well, I just
sure
actually thought of, after I said that, I thought of the game I'd already talked about, Minecraft, the open world indie game.
It's true, made by a tiny team of people that are now probably all multimillionaires.
They're all multimillionaires, and they still only have like 20 people in their beautiful Stockholm studio. Although I will say that even though Minecraft is one of the most effective open world games, it's still very simple, and it's part of what makes it so successful.
There is no narrative
They cannot
in Minecraft.
Control that much, so they just simplify it. It's blocks. It's not necessarily that pretty. Like when a building burns down, it isn't this gorgeous spectacle of control. It does things in a very obvious and simple little way, and so it kind of bucks what I was saying there. It's not possible for indie games to have an open world experience, but it shows you the kind of trade-off that if they're going to, they can't give you that frostbite destructibility.
Right. Which I think is probably why we haven't seen that be the case yet.
Yeah.
The thing that I guess we would wonder about the future then is particularly thinking about maybe licensing, like with the new Unreal Engine, or maybe even getting a smaller studio that is able to license out like Frostbite technology or something like that. Doing that, could they potentially bring those technologies into their
get it into the hands of people that
of a few really talented people who can then utilize it in a big way on a small title.
You're not restricting it to the few years. You're opening it up to a lot of people.
And then it's more about the idea and less about, well, not less about, but it's a combination of the idea of Minecraft and an idea and concept is what people are just infatuated with. And at the same time, I think that's GTA 5 really marries the two in just the concept and the beautiful imagery. But you can sell one and the other, doesn't it? You can sell them separately.
Yeah. Sure. And something else we were talking about, Schupsky, and you made so I'm not going to take credit for this because you made up a really interesting scenario, and just thinking about like what if NPCs in say an Elder Scrolls game or any game, say they're crafting a sword, so you have a blacksmith and he's forging a sword. You see him working on something. What if his inventory only updates with that sword once he's finished making it? So it really becomes like the physical thing that you're seeing is actually a representation of the data that's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, it goes back to like SimCity, like you said, where like I haven't played it obviously, but you said like trucks going to and from factories. Like that's not just a piece of art. That's
right. That's the delivery going from one place to another. When it arrives, it goes into the thing. Yeah. It's like it's actually happening.
And like going to Skyrim, like Skyrim was really good at giving the NPCs things to do, like the blacksmith.
Right, but they aren't actually. Their inventory just updates every 48 hours. Yeah. It's like it doesn't actually affect anything.
Yeah, and like their currency refreshes every couple of days. Like what if?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
what if it was totally? So it's like say NPCs actually the amount of gold they have is determined by like your your skills. Actually, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not based on like the local economy. It's not based on where they're positioned, what sort of through traffic they have, how many people are buying weapons that particular week. It has nothing to do with that. It's just like, oh, well, every 48 hours I have 1,000 gold.
Yeah.
Why? Where do you get that gold from? You have 1,000 gold. That's a lot of gold.
Yeah, you just there it is.
Yeah, poof. A lot of gold.
That's a slippery slope of dreaming about an Elder Scrolls that has a fully functioning market that changes depending on the
games
combat
exist,
and things. Oh.
No. That's not that.
That's
exists.
exactly how Sim is.
No.
SimCity.
No, I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm saying the danger of giving me a Skyrim.
Oh, right.
I'm doing this.
Well, sure, that would be the end of all of us, I'm sure. But I mean, this is what happens with people who play like EVE Online, is that you don't see them ever again. Yeah, once they get sucked in, I mean, it has a fully functional economy. They have economists working for them full time. to regulate the economy in a video game. It's absurd. And even Grand Theft Auto has a functioning economy.
Taking the idea of
or stock market, right?
Taking the idea of destructible environments, say to like the GTA. What if like houses were destructible and you could destroy a house, but then like the next day you see a construction team come to the house, the destroyed house.
As we've been saying
build it back
online, playing Grand Theft Auto back and forth, we're desperately hoping that the construction, that skyscraper cannot just stay in construction forever. We're not sure if it's being built or not.
It's too soon to tell.
Sometimes I think, are there more glass panels on that than there were 5 hours ago? I'm not sure. I just really want it to be. It just seems like such a wasted opportunity for that skyscraper to be in construction at the beginning of the game and not have it completed when the story is completed. I mean, how easy is that? Did you not think of that? I digress.
We all digress. But I think that was good. Let's move on to Steambox. This week we got the announcement of the Steam machine, they're calling it. It's not the Steam Box, quote.
Steam machine.
Yes.
Thank you, Schupsky. Thank you very much.
If they called it Steam Box, we've determined that would be pretty funny.
Would you like to explain to our listeners?
We have to explain what
No,
a Steam Box
I think you should.
In terms of Mike Schupsky, it's what he does on the weekend. But if somebody would get a Steam Box on their front door, let's just say that would not be a favor.
All right,
say,
so
my Steam Box has arrived. Oh, shit.
Quite literally shit.
Quite literally. Shit.
But the Steam Box is not a box full of shit. It is, in fact, a box full of really, really wonderful computer technology. So the Steam Box was announced this week, along with SteamOS and the very interesting controller. What are our initial impressions of that? Is this a competitor for next-gen consoles, or is this something else entirely?
I think it could be.
Yeah.
The controller excites me just in the fact that it's
Sexually?
Yes.
The vibration.
I'm wet with envy. But like, it's just one of those times that you look at something and you think, well, all right, I guess we wanted something innovative and new, and
there it is.
Holy shit, you just gave me something that looks like, I don't even know what it looks like.
It looks like the future.
I couldn't have dreamed it up.
Yeah.
It's crazy. In that sense, it excites me. Is it the future? It could be.
I think
Will it be? There are...
With timidity, one more time.
And as I imagine we're going to discuss in a second, I think there are very good things about the Steam Box, and there are some potential downfalls to the Steam Box's success.
Linux. Let's talk about Linux.
I'm a fan of Linux.
Well, there's being a fan of
Linux.
In terms of gaming, yes, that's a question mark. That's a very big question mark. Gabe Newell has openly and bombastically supported Linux as the future of gaming, quote unquote, which I don't really buy. I think that's kind of like talk to talk up his Steam machine, Steam Box. But
we're talking about dry cleaning.
But yeah, like this is the thing. Like if you go to Steam and you search games for Linux, like not much out there.
Nope.
Yeah, so.
Though they do have a workaround for this. They have the ability to stream Windows and Mac games from a PC or a Mac that you already have through your Steam Box.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
But that also means that you have to have a high-end gaming computer or a Mac to start with, in addition to buying a SteamOS machine.
So it's the machine for the 1%.
Well, this is the problem. This is. But really, though, this is the problem.
But I think what we're talking about still is something that fills a market need, or a market shift, a trend. I mean, we're talking about cloud-based being the next generation. I mean,
but this isn't really cloud-based, though. It's basically just but I think it's important to note, first of all, that there will be multiple manufacturers of SteamOS capable machines. It isn't just that Valve is building one box and that's it. Right. It's the fact that they aren't necessarily controlling the hardware. There will be different levels of system.
On top of the fact that the hardware, even after it's built, is designed to be upgradable.
Right.
So you're kind of defeating the whole purposeful advantage of having a console.
A console, right.
The reason why consoles succeed is that everyone has the same thing.
Right, they're all
Yeah.
spec'd the same,
And
the
you can
exact
know,
same.
everyone can buy the same game because everyone knows how this game is going to run, and it can be designed and optimized
Right,
specifically for that.
you're right. It's console optimization is really the biggest benefit, the single biggest benefit of consoles.
We were talking. This is a perfect example of indie. Then this is where we might see an indie trend
Mhm.
in that smaller companies can compete in a market where it's really.
It's true. Indie and Steam are much more friendly than they are with Sony or Xbox.
Oh,
Oh
right.
yeah, definitely.
So I think that's also where we can see.
That's true, but
potential growth.
are people playing indie games in their living room on a big screen TV on $1,000 piece of hardware?
I think
Or is that just someone with a lot of disposable
a
income?
lot of time and a lot of money.
Yeah.
Or that's what they want to do. They want to.
I
That's
mean,
what they spend their money on.
Right, yeah,
That's-
it could be, but...
It's true. I mean, it's not to say that there are people who this is perfect for,
Oh, sure.
but are there enough people to make this a game-changing force? Enough to really upset the chokehold that Sony and Microsoft have on the console market?
But I think the biggest benefit, and it goes back to the controller, it lets you play games that were previously unplayable on the TV, playable. Like think of playing SimCity on the TV.
But
I
with
think
the controller, that's
with the controller,
a crazy thing to think
Yeah,
about.
like SimCity. I don't know. Well, games like that, I'm not sure will still make the translation. I mean,
Or strategy. I mean,
they've made-
strategy in general. Yeah, like think
they've
of
made
strategy.
the argument that that's what it's for, and I think that's why they say it with the controller. It gives you precision like a mouse, but precision like a mouse
Isn't a mouse.
Still not as good as
Also, where's
I
the
could
keyboard?
Use a mouse,
Yeah.
Right. And if you're using a mouse and keyboard, you're not sitting in front of your TV.
right?
It's
No.
just not going to
No,
happen.
no, it's not going to happen. But I think the controller gives you enough of flexibility to be able to optimize a game like that for the TV. Like it's automatically better than like any strategy games that have been attempted to be put on a console. Like I just remember going back to N64, Command and Conquer on my N64. I thought at the time I thought it was a shit, but now I'm like, wow, that was a piece of shit. That was an awful game. Mostly because of the thumbsticks. You can't control a cursor with thumbsticks. But with this, like with the two touchpads, I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, I think that's
Maybe.
this is one of the things that I think we would really have to have a hands on.
Yeah.
Because I think it's not going to be like any controller that we've ever touched
No.
before.
Yeah,
Developers-
it's hard to know.
Developers need to get their hands on it. Just journalists need to get their hands on it.
Yeah, I think
when people actually get the chance to see what it looks like and see how it feels, like they'll be like, okay, this is going to work.
I don't think it's the Samsung to change Apple, but I think it could be I think it could be a change, a little bit of a different.
And this is my point. Like, I don't think it's directly competing. Well, it is directly competing with consoles, but I don't think it's trying to do what Microsoft and Sony are doing. They're trying to give you a.
It's true. It's in more competition with the Ouya, I think, maybe than it would be with
the
an
Ouya,
Xbox.
or just like trying to get
Although the
PC
Ouya's
gamers,
not doing so great.
or trying to get PC gamers
right
to
to
the
play
TV.
on a
to
TV.
the TV. Yeah. I think that's who it's really for. Because like they're basing it off of the Steam community, and like
That's true. And the Steam community is entirely PC.
on PC,
and it's a
gamers.
huge, powerful community.
very big.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, I suppose thinking about it that way, I mean, these are people who have and continue to and will continue to in the future shell out $1,000 for a gaming PC.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, there
Every
are
few years.
professional Counter-Strike
I mean-
players in
I
the
mean,
world.
people who it is very important to update your video card once a year. So they spend $300 on a new video card every single year. I mean, it's like these. We shouldn't forget about these sorts of people and the fact that as Mike Hogue pointed out, there are people who that is what they choose to spend their money on, and perhaps this is the thing that switches them over to playing on a TV. Maybe the controller, and I think the controller is going to be the big, the fulcrum on which
this is where
this sort of sits.
Yeah, because like this has always been the problem. Like, how do you interact with a PC game with a controller?
Right.
How do you interact with a game?
Right. So it's either been you have mouse and keyboard,
Mouse and
or
keyboard.
you have like a gaming console,
Joysticks,
right?
yeah,
Joystick.
DualShock. Yeah, but like this is kind of, I would say, like, it bridges the gap in a way. It kind of is like a happy medium between the two.
Or so they're sort of preaching.
So the idea is, anyway. And again, it's a little too early to say if that's the case. But I can see
In theory, yes.
the
I
potential
think
is there.
it really, the way, talking about it like that, and is it going to be profitable? Is it going to be helpful? This might be a good time to also remind ourselves that Valve is not making the hardware. And before we said how this is a detriment to it in terms of competing with Microsoft and Sony, but if we look at it from that Google Android point of view, Valve isn't making the hardware. Valve doesn't have to lose the money.
On the
Valve
hardware.
gets to benefit from the environment that they already own.
Yeah. Basically increase game sales.
Increase the number of people who have Steam. I mean, the people who have Steam already aren't going to stop having Steam just because it's true. Like,
and so their operating system is free, but their operating system is a means to purchase things via Steam, which brings in money for Valve. And as you said, they aren't taking a loss on any of this hardware, which, by the way, hardware is the biggest thing to take a loss on. I mean, companies produce hardware at a loss. Retailers sell hardware at the purchase price. No one makes money on hardware. Everyone makes money on software. Valve clearly understands this, and they're going for it.
Right, and I mean, Google's doing really well with Android. I mean, their concept of marketing that out, it doesn't create a consistent market, as we've mentioned before. Apple has a consistent market and a controlled ecosystem. When you buy an iPhone, you know exactly what it is, and they've got a high level of consistent quality. With Android, there are some good Android phones, there are some okay Android phones, and there are some terrible Android phones. And you don't always know what you're getting if you haven't researched your product, and some companies do terribly, and some companies fail, and some companies flounder. The only consistent part of it being Google keeps making money off of it. Google has no problems with this at all.
And Valve is happy to be
the Google of gaming? Oh, no. How terrible that must be.
Yeah.
No, I think that those are all really great points.
Yeah, Android is definitely playing to the market, while Apple is more...
Apple's more invested. Like, if Apple stops selling iPhones, Apple's got a problem. If people stop buying Android phones, Google has less of a problem. Then they just need to find a new way to get people to use their services. How many people can do a Google search? How many people can do Gmail as their email? How many people can use their... That's how they operate. And so if phones don't work out, we'll move on to something else, like giving high-speed internet to the entire country.
Yeah, little things like that.
Like, they like to do throw little breadcrumbs here and there.
Like to give back to the community.
Yeah.
All right, well, that'll wrap it up for this week. You can go to our Facebook page. That is facebook.com/alive2play. Like our page. Our Twitter feed is @alive2play. You can tweet at us there. If you like the A2Pcast, make sure you subscribe. Like our video. Blah, blah, blah. Logo is new. It's fancy. I'm sure you've noticed because you, listener, are attentive and beautiful, might I add. So we will be back with another one next week. I am Mike Rifenbury, the editor of Live to Play, for Josh Hartman, Mike Schupsky, and Mike Hogue. We'll see you guys later.